Marissa had been jogging her usual track when she suddenly found herself not to be alone. On the side of the trail, she saw a wild black bear staring at her. Sensing her alarm, the creature lowered itself further down on the ground. Marissa, though scared, felt the need to follow it as it slowly walked away from the path, turning around to wait for her ever so often. But she never thought that with following a bear, she would find this. But before we start, make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The bear did not look angry or dangerous, and it did not try to attack her. For some reason, her fear disappeared, and she felt like the bear needed her help. She had never been this close to a bear before, but she had heard many stories about how dangerous bears are, and how you should keep your distance from them at all times. "You're not that vicious, though, are you?" she quietly whispered as the bear slowly walked away from her, looking back at her every few steps. Several people saw what was going on, and they all yelled to Marissa, "Run! Get away from that animal right now!" "Fuck it! I'm doing this!" she told herself, and she stepped into the bush next to the walking path. Nobody else was here. It was just her and the bear. The bear slowly continued its walk deeper into the forest, and Marissa followed it, making sure not to trip over a tree root. "Where are you taking me?" She was going to share her location with her boyfriend Derek. She quickly texted him, "Sharing location just in case, I'll explain later," and put her phone back in her pocket. She made sure to put it on silent, thinking that if someone texted or called her, the noise might scare the bear, and she did not want that to happen. The whole time, the bear kept looking back to check whether Marissa was still following it. As they walked deeper into the forest, Marissa noticed that it was getting late. Finally, the bear slowed down a bit and started sniffing around. "What is it? What are you looking for?" It was the bear. It was growling. Marissa was suddenly terrified, and she deeply regretted her decision. What was I even thinking? Marissa noticed that the bear was looking at something behind a thick tree. It was just out of her sight. She slowly took a few steps towards the tree, and when she was finally able to see what was behind it, she gasped. You see, the bear had led her to a campsite. There was a tent, and whoever had stayed there had made a campfire the night before. The ashes were still a bit warm. However, there was nobody inside the tent, and it had been left open. It seemed like the camper had left in a hurry, and Marissa couldn't help but look inside. Who was staying here? And why had they left in such a rush? Something odd was going on here, and she wanted to know what exactly. While every instinct told her to head back, the bear's movements held her back. Upon further examination, Marissa noticed peculiar things. Inside, amidst the clothes and maps, she found a small locket with a picture of a family and a camera with a half-filled memory card. Among the scattered belongings, Marissa's fingers brushed against the soft, worn leather of a diary. Pulling it out, she dusted off the pine needles and leaves, revealing an embossed bear on the cover. The first pages were filled with neat handwriting, detailing the traveler's excitement about his journey into the forest. He wrote of his awe at the myriad of sounds echoing in the night, wondering about the creatures that made them. One passage read, "Their majesty is unparalleled, especially the black bears." The traveler's admiration for the bears took a more focused turn. "I've heard tales of a rare white-furred bear cub in this region," he penned. His desire was clear. He wished to document this cub, believing it could be the centerpiece of a groundbreaking documentary. Marissa's heart raced as she began to grasp the extent of the traveler's plans. Dread filled Marissa as she continued. The traveler's obsession had turned dark. "This cub is mine by destiny. If it won't come to me willingly, I have measures to ensure it does." There were sketches of cages and details about bait. Every word, every hastily drawn map became a potential clue. Her fing. Marissa felt the weight of the decision pressing on her. Should she rush to the nearest ranger station, potentially wasting precious time, or should she use the clues at her disposal and venture forth herself? She considered the bear outside, its insistent behavior, its silent plea. It was almost as if it trusted her to do the right thing. Perhaps the mother bear had watched the traveler, sensed his intentions, and had desperately sought an ally in Marissa. She would do whatever it took to reunite the mother with her cub. Each whimper and echo tugged at her heart, fueling her with an urgency she hadn't felt before. She began moving in the direction of the sound. With every step, the cries seemed to grow both clearer and more distressed. Suddenly, Marissa stumbled upon a trap. It was empty but freshly set, the metal gleaming ominously. For a moment, her heart sank, fearing the worst. Nearby, she found a camera, discarded in haste. The lens had captured images of the forest, but no bear. Not allowing despair to set in, Marissa turned her attention back to the distant cries. The connection between the woman and the bear grew stronger, bound by their shared determination. As Marissa and the bear pushed further into the forest, they came upon a clearing where several large cages stood. More concerning was a smaller cage lying on its side, its door broken open. Tufts of bear fur were caught on its jagged edges, and nearby a tranquilizer dart lay discarded in the dirt. Without hesitation, Marissa turned on her heels, heading back to the campsite. Every minute counted now, and the pressing weight of the cub's fate pushed her forward. If there were more cages or snares, those cutters could be the key to freeing the trapped animals, including the bear cub. Reaching the campsite, Marissa dove into the tent. She rummaged through the scattered belongings, her hands sifting through maps, clothes, and equipment. Her fingers brushed against cold metal, and she pulled out a set of wire cutters. The feeling of relief was short-lived, however, as a rustling sound outside caught her attention. Emerging from the tent, Marissa's eyes darted around, trying to identify the source of the sound. The surrounding shadows seemed to play tricks on her, but then, from the edge of the clearing, a pair of eyes glinted back at her. Someone had been watching, waiting, and Marissa knew she was no longer alone in her mission. As she readied herself, muffled voices became distinguishable just beyond the clearing. 2, maybe 3 people were discussing something, their words blending with the forest's ambient sounds. "I told you she'd come back here," one voice hissed. Marissa's heart rate quickened. They were talking about her. She crouched low, using the tent as cover. Peering out, she caught glimpses of moving shadows. As one of the figures approached her hiding spot, Marissa held her breath, praying she was well concealed. But then, the shadow paused, its head turning directly towards her. Their eyes locked. It was the traveler from the diary, his face grizzled, an expression one of frustration. Behind him, 2 others emerged, holding nets and gear. "Looking for something?" he taunted, eyes fixated on Marissa's. She clutched the knife tighter. The standoff between her and the traveler was palpable, each second stretching on endlessly. In a split-second decision, Marissa lunged to the side, using the element of surprise to her advantage. The traveler moved to intercept, but the adult bear, sensing the danger, let out a deep roar, causing a momentary distraction. Seizing the chance, Marissa dashed into the woods, knife in hand, hoping to use the dense underbrush to elude her pursuers. The chase was on. Marissa stumbled upon a clearing where a heartbreaking scene awaited her. The cub, with its innocent eyes, was trapped in a net, whimpering softly. It struggled weakly, its strength evidently waning. Seeing the cub ensnared, everything clicked into place for Marissa. The adult bear's behavior, its determination to keep Marissa at the camp, and its urgency in the forest. It was all an attempt to save its baby. The sheer desperation, fear, and hope in the bear's eyes resonated with Marissa. They weren't just animals. They were a family fighting for survival. Upon closer inspection, the intricacy of the netting around the cub made Marissa's stomach churn. It wasn't merely an abandoned piece of equipment. This was a deliberate trap. The robust and cunningly designed snare was clearly intended for creatures of considerable strength. The sharp barbs embedded into the net and a remote alarm system suggested that this wasn't the work of amateurs. This was a trapper's masterpiece. Drawing a steady breath, Marissa approached the ensnared cub with the utmost caution. The adult bear's eyes tracked her every move, its concern palpable in the tense air. Marissa knew the stakes. One wrong move could provoke the bear or cause further harm to the cub. Softly murmuring words of comfort, she carefully began to work on the snare, trying to find its weak points. Every tug, every cut brought Marissa closer to the cub. Her hands, though trembling slightly, moved with determination. The cub's distressed whimpers turned to curious sniffs as it felt her gentle touch. Each soothing word, each careful maneuver made it evident to the watching mother. Marissa was here to help. In the midst of this crisis, an unbreakable bond was forming between human and bears. With one last pull, the cub was free. It immediately scampered to its mother, burying its face in her thick fur. But their surroundings didn't allow for a prolonged reunion. Distant voices grew louder, and the rustling of underbrush signaled approaching danger. The traveler and perhaps others were drawing near, and their intentions were clear. The adult bear, sensing the imminent threat, positioned herself between Marissa and the oncoming danger, shielding both the girl and her cub. Her growls echoed with ferocity, warning any who dared approach. The sheer magnitude of her protective stance made Marissa realize the strength and bravery of a mother's love. It was a love that transcended species, and Marissa knew they were united in their fight against the looming menace. The dense woods resonated with the cub's excited cries as it found solace in its mother's embrace. The two bears entwined, nuzzling and playfully swiping at one another. It was a sight of pure joy, an intimate moment of a family once separated, now reunited. Marissa stood at a distance, her heart swelling with happiness and relief, overwhelmed by the powerful bond she was witnessing. The mother bear approached Marissa, her deep eyes holding a warmth that seemed almost human in its depth. With a gentle nudge, the massive creature rested her head briefly against Marissa's, a silent thank you that spoke louder than any words. The cub, too, sauntered up, playfully tugging at her shoelaces. It was a moment of pure, unspoken gratitude, an acknowledgement of the bond they had formed. Following the bear's lead, Marissa soon found herself walking along a path she hadn't noticed before. The trees began to thin out, and the familiar sounds of the world beyond started to filter through. With every step, the forest's embrace loosened, and she could see the edge of the woods. The bears paused, seemingly understanding they had to part ways, but ensuring she was safely guided out. Stepping out of the forest, the sunlight seemed a tad brighter, the air a touch fresher. As she made her way back to her life, Marissa couldn't shake off the overwhelming emotions she felt. The adventure had not only been a test of her courage, but a journey of self-discovery. She had forged a bond with nature, with the wild, and it had changed her profoundly. Back in the midst of her daily routine, Marissa often found herself lost in memories of her time in the forest. The office buzz, the city's hum, couldn't drown out the wilderness whisper in her ear. Every rustling leaf, every bird's song took her back. She wore the lessons of trust, unity, and love as a badge of honor, cherishing the incredible bond she had formed with the wild.